Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. Zoom is a tech platform, of course, many people hadn't heard of before the coronavirus, but now it seems like everybody is using it. Active users soared to as many as 200 million per day in March. That's up from 10 million just in December. But with that popularity came a lot of security concerns after reports that some users were intruding on others' meetings. The company recently announced a 90-day plan to try to address its security issues, including hiring privacy experts. And our next guest is one of them. Joining us right now is former Facebook Chief Security Officer Alex Stamos. He's now advising Zoom's CEO on how to make the platform more secure. Alex, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Hey, thank you. Good morning.
So we actually had an interview earlier this week with the CFO of the company. I'm curious, given your role, A, how did you get the job? And what have you been telling them they need to do?
So I got the job by tweeting, of all things. So, when Zoom became incredibly popular, lots of people in the security industry started talking about some of the flaws that are being found, as well as the huge challenge they were facing to scale from around 10 million users per day to 200 million, which is the kind of thing that's actually pretty much unprecedented in the internet industry. And so I was tweeting about the fact that these bugs were serious and that this was a really critical moment for them. What it brought to mind me was Microsoft's moment in 2009 or Google in 2009. Those big companies went through security crises that led to them having to do significant revamps of their security program. And so the CEO found my phone number, gave me a call, and we chatted, and he's been very receptive since.
So what are the kinds of things that you've been telling him? And how quickly do you think that they can get implemented?
Yeah, so they really have two different classes of problems. The first is the traditional security problem, right? So they've had security flaws, like all software, they have bugs. But now that everybody's paying attention to them, those bugs are going to have to be harder to find, and they're going to have to change how their software works. So if there is a security flaw, that it's not as big a deal, that it's not necessarily a disaster. The second set, that's kind of standard security. That's what us in the industry have done for a long time and have figured out how to do. That's about just hiring the right people, applying the right processes, and bringing in the right consultants. And so there's 3 penetration tests going on. There's a lot of people working on core product security. The other side is actually the really interesting challenge, which is Zoom has gone from being a successful mid-sized IT firm that was used mostly by large enterprises. And so large enterprises have employees who are logged into an authentication system. They have professional IT admins, and they have people who interact, under a set of rules, right? When you have an internal conference call at CNBC, you don't expect somebody to come in and start, showing pornography on their screen, right? But what happened is now that they've shifted over to a consumer mindset, you have strangers together for the first time ever in these Zooms, or teenagers who are a little bit immature, in a variety of different use cases. And for that, what they've had to do is really kind of rethink the product from the ground up, from how does it look to users? And they have to no longer act just like as an enterprise company, but as the kinds of consumer companies like a Google or a Facebook, Instagram, and the like, who have to deal with those kinds of problems. And so they're building up a whole new set of capabilities internally to do that.
Okay, so Alex, and I don't know if this is an easy question for you to answer or not, given the role you're having advising them right now. If you had to have a secure and private conference meeting today, in an hour from now, when Squawk Box over, would you do it on Zoom?
I would. So, I mean, to be frank, my 3 kids use Zoom every day for school. My team at Stanford, so I run a team that studies political disinformation around the world. We use Zoom for our meetings every day. All of the video products have security issues. They're actually quite complicated products to build securely, and all the competing products have had big lists of bugs over the last couple of years. And the key thing is to just be really careful in your setup. So if you're going to use Zoom, make sure you've set a password. Make sure that you're careful about who you send the link to. And if you're doing it in a situation where you might have strangers showing up, make sure to turn on the waiting room feature so you can let people in. So that's especially for like schools and the like, that teachers are letting students in and making sure that they're gating. But I think the security issues, they've popped up and they've been addressed very quickly. And that's what you want to see. Software has security flaws, and Zoom is reacting to that. And they're also trying to bend the curve on preventing these flaws in the future.
So the Senate, there was a memo sent out to people as part of in the Senate not to use Zoom. Google sent out a memo to its employees that for company business, they shouldn't be using Zoom. Of course, Google has a competitive product at the same time. But how should users think about those kinds of warnings that are coming out and that are reaching the public?
I mean, what you're going to see is all of these enterprises are now dealing with the fact they've gone for people using video conferencing, as an important thing to everything. Right. And so what's going on is all these enterprise risk management teams are going and assessing all of their different options. And like I said, the truth is that all of the products have interesting security features. So, Google, there's been discussion around Zoom's encryption not being end to end, and that's true. We're working on some options in the area. Neither is Google Hangouts, neither is Microsoft Teams, neither is WebEx. None of those products provide that level of security. They all decrypt the communication on the network, and then they have security controls in place to protect it. And so I think what's happened is there's been a little bit of an overreaction because honestly, the media has picked up a number of issues with Zoom that are universal issues with video conferencing, or that are issues with ship software. And people have reacted to that. And then their risk management people go look at the options and they say, oh, well, we have issues with all of these. In any of these cases, people could drop into your meeting if you don't send a password. In any of these cases, if you put a URL on a public site, people can find it. And so we're just going to be careful about setting those up. And so, some enterprises have said that, like including enterprises that have competing products. There's also a bunch of governments that have done the look and they've decided to come back. So, I think you'll just see this settle out over the next 30 days or so as companies try to figure out how do we work in this kind of crazy environment.